Buying home solar panels in Arizona should be a no-brainer. With inflation hitting everybody hard, rolling blackouts that we're seeing in California, and energy rationing in Europe, who wouldn't want to take advantage of Arizona's 300 days of sunshine every year? Heck, in California, all the homes built after 2020 have to include solar by law.
Over there, what we'll see, instead of a home that just has a roof on it, what we'll now see is homes with solar panels.
Now, to me, the sound of not having to pay my $600 electric bill in the summer sounds great. But there are some hard truths that the solar salesman won't share with you, because for them, it could, of course, jeopardize their sale. And it's creating mass confusion, not only for those people that are purchasing solar new, but also for those purchasing a home that has existing solar on it. Now, one of the most important questions my buyers fail to even ask is, will solar affect my resale value? And we'll get into that soon. First, we're going to go through the startup costs that most people don't even consider when purchasing solar. Then we're going to talk about the hidden costs of solar that you need to know about before purchasing. And then I'm going to follow up with the actual cost and incentives and answer the big question for you: is purchasing solar really worth it? But first, let me tell you the sneaky secret behind how solar works, which is what most people really don't think about until they open their electric bill and say,
"What the hell is this?"
Now, we all know solar helps power your home when the sun comes out in the morning at around, let's say, 5 a.m. through dusk around 7 p.m. Now, these are summertime hours here, by the way. As solar brings in energy, your home is going to turn off power from the grid, and it generates and sustains its own electricity through your solar panels. Now, that sounds great, but what about when the sun is gone? Your home will absolutely need to take power from the electrical provider's grid because the sun is no longer powering your home. This costs money. Now, imagine you're living in Arizona where your AC kicks on every 10 minutes during the night because the summer temperatures really don't drop below 95 degrees. Or imagine you have a family of electrical cars that needs to trickle charge for hours after everybody gets home from work at 6 p.m. So what would the costs look like to sustain those nightly bills? Is it worth it? This is going to incur a pretty hefty nightly fee, and we'll go over those numbers. But before you can even think about getting solar, there's one step that most people forget to consider. And if you bypass this, it can cost you thousands. Question you have to ask yourself is, are you truly ready to have solar installed? I mean the roof, like, is the roof ready? I like to call these startup costs. Now imagine you install your panels and then 5 years later, your roof starts to leak. You call over a roofer, they come out, they tell you that you need a completely new roof. Well, that's exactly what happened to a friend of mine, and the roofers wouldn't touch the solar panels. So they had to call the original installers out to remove the panels. And believe it or not, labor isn't free, so they had to pay for the service. Then they had to pay a roofer. Then they had to pay the solar installers to put these back on again. Now you're probably thinking, holy crap, what was the total cost? I just had a client get a quote on replacing their roof. It was a single-story home, about 2,500 square feet, and that came out to $14,000 just to put things into perspective. And the cost to remove solar panels and replace them so that the roofers could work?
Well, it costs more than you want it to.
Yeah.
But it really, there's factors depending how far you are from your solar provider, the pitch of your roof, how many modules. But if you need just a general idea, a number I like to use that seems to work fairly regularly is about $300 per solar panel.
And a 2,500 square foot home could have 20 panels. That's $6,000 for panels and $14,000 for a roof. So now we have a preparation fee just to even get solar on our home. But what about the nightly cost? Well, no, we'll have to pay since there's no sun out at this time. I like to call this the hidden cost. It's something that a lot of owners forget about. For this example, let's use my family's average electric bill to see what would be covered theoretically under a solar power plan. And I do realize this is an estimate. Looking at my own power bills, my family spends on average $300 per month on electricity. Don't ask me how, but they do. I think it's from the kids leaving the lights on all night. We also use about 38% of power from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. and 62% of our power from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. And once again, these are summertime averages. So instead of solar kicking my $300 average to zero like all the salespeople are going to tell me, my bill will look to be more around $114 per month. Now, if we multiply that by 12, And then by 20, that's 12 months over 20 years, that's still $27,360 on top of the cost of solar, which I haven't even gone over yet. Now, if you haven't clicked off this video in disgust, you're probably thinking that despite all of this, it's still got to be worth it for solar. Otherwise, they wouldn't sell it. So how much is solar itself, and what is the math on the total? To answer that, let's first take a look at the incentives that are being offered, and we'll subtract the incentives from the total cost of solar. Now, with a quick Google search, I found that there's an Arizona residential solar income tax credit of 25% off of the installation cost, but with a maximum value of $1,000.
$1,000? What the
Now, with some further Googling, I found a federal tax credit of 30% of the cost. So that comes out to $6,000. So your savings here on a $20,000 system is going to be $7,000 in tax credits. Now, let me stop you right there and shed some light on tax credits. Tax credits are very similar to the coins you purchase at Chuck E. Cheese. They won't work on the games at Dave & Buster's, only at Chuck E. Cheese. So let's say you're working at Walmart. You get a tax refund every year. Well, you're not going to be able to use those tax credits probably ever. The only people that are going to be able to use those taxes are those that have like their own business. They owe money to the IRS, people like me that have to pay taxes every year. Now, let's say I had to pay $10,000 in taxes. Well, they would reduce this by $7,000 in this example to only a $3,000 tax liability for me. So I would save money because I owe taxes every year. And there have been many people across the country that have not understood this, and they've fallen victim to solar companies.
Some companies leave customers wrongfully thinking they qualify.
But then later finding out they're stuck paying the whole bill. And by then, you guessed it, it's too late to cancel.
It feels like you got taken to the cleaners.
Now, the only qualification you need is to pay federal taxes. Do you pay federal income tax?
On disability.
You still file taxes at the end of the year?
Yes.
They take federal income tax out of you?
Yes.
Okay, so you qualify. That's all that matters.
So Ryan, what is the final cost once we price this out and we've added all these cost incentives? Now, a really handy dandy website you can go to is sunroof.withgoogle.com. Punch in your address. They'll size out the system for you after you give them your average electric bill. So you'll need to take your whole electric bill for the whole year, divide that by 12, give them that number, and then they'll also give you a typical cost along with the incentives that are available in your state. I don't know how they calculate this exactly, but for my home with an average of $300 per month electric bill, it showed a cost for a 10 kilowatt system out the door to be about $42,000. They then calculated only $10,587 for the nightly use over 20 years. I think that's very low, and I kind of went over this with you guys already. And conveniently, they'll throw in those tax credits that you probably can't use in the amount of $13,503 for me, which brings my total down to $38,762. Without solar, your total electrical cost would be $88,853. So this site shows you saving $50,000 over 20 years with solar. Now, who the heck wouldn't want to save that much money, am I right? I know I threw a lot of numbers at you guys. Let me recap all this. We'll give you the exact cost of what it is to put solar on your home. Number one, getting your roof ready if needed. About $14,000 to $25,000, depending on the size of your home, of course. Number two, solar purchased on a home with a $300 a month energy bill, $41,678. And that's saying that you're a W-2 employee. You're not going to get any of those sweet tax incentives back. Number three, the overnight costs that really aren't going to go away to get energy off of the grid over 20 years. Well, we took that number and it came out to $43,200. So what does that all equal? Well, if you're getting your roof redone, it comes out to $98,878 on the low end, $109,878 on the high end. Cost of just using electricity at $300 per month for 20 years and not doing this, $72,000. Some of you skeptics might be thinking that you can use the solar after the 20-year period and you'll eventually make back your money, and that's absolutely correct. In the scenario above, you would break even eventually. There's no doubt about it, but you're also going to have solar repairs. You're also going to have to repair your roof. Don't forget, take those panels off put him back on every 20 years. Now, there is an added bonus here, guys. Zillow says that homes with solar sold for 4.1% more than comparable homes without solar. In Arizona, the median home price here is about $440,000, so that's almost like a $17,000 payback for having solar. And a home worth $1 million would get back about $41,000. So that's great. You can buy a home, purchase solar for about $40,000, and then maybe make about $20,000, $25,000 back on it if you go to sell your home. That would be great for the next person buying the home, no doubt about it. Which leads me into a few other scenarios that I didn't talk about, and maybe they're viable options. You can get a loan on your panels and not pay them all up front, or you could lease your panels. So make sure you watch this video next, where I talk about whether or not it's worth it to lease or borrow money to purchase solar panels and the possible pitfalls that you can run into if you do.